Hello, and good night, or good morning, or good afternoon, no matter where you are. Welcome to today's show. We are going to have a bit of a fun time ahead. We have a nice kind of moderated discussion coming up on the topic of, is atheism a cult? On the affirmative side, we have the big diesel engine himself, Isaiah, aka Dr. Evil. So, welcome. You looking forward to it?
Dr. Evil. I prefer Mr. Clean. I got the earring right here, but Dr. Evil's fine.
Not a reference I get, but maybe I'm either too young or in the wrong country. One of the
Wrong
two.
country.
We shall see how it goes. But, of course, a discussion/debate is not worth anything if you don't have two people there at least to actually do the debate, because this is not my topic. I'm the scientist here. I don't do this. So instead, obviously, it wouldn't be, Godless Scummer's channel without Jeff himself. So on the negative side, we have Jeff. In a moment. There we go. Yes. So hopefully, and again, welcome to everyone tonight in the chat. I can see quite a few people there. I don't know if, Jeff, you want to say hello to anyone in particular, but I'm seeing quite a few names.
Well, a special hello. I see Darth Dawkins is in the chat. Hi, Darth. Yeah. Good to see Culture Cats in the chat as well. There's a few people actually. Hereticals. Some bloke almost a doctor. Don't know him. I've missed anyone. No, I apologise.
Well, I think there's probably not much more of an intro needed for what we're actually doing tonight, because, well, we have our title down below and I've already said it. So I think, unless people want to do general intros for themselves, maybe we can just get into giving you about 5 minutes each to present your side, and then we'll get into just the open discussion part of it.
Okay, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first.
All right. So for the most part, I'll try not to distract from this, and I'll keep my opinion to myself since I'll be moderating. I'll be doing my best in the chat, but I'll also do it here. And so if my camera comes back on, that's basically my cue that I have some moderating to do. But apart from that, I'll give you 5 minutes, and whenever you're ready, take it away.
All right. Be sure to tell me when I have 10 or 30 seconds or something. But anyway, first of all, thank you, Matt and Godless Scummer. Interesting name. But first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on your channel and for agreeing to moderate this discussion, more of a discussion. But also want to congratulate you both on the Queen and her Golden Jubilee. I know you Aussies under the Commonwealth, so I know that was a really big thing in both countries. So anyway, I also do want to praise real quick Godless Scummer, because he did do a critique of my talk with Jay, and I think it was very charitable and generous. And so if you discount all the profanity and the personal insults, I thought you did actually a really good job in critiquing that. And so I hope to have that same spirit of goodwill and charity, as I said. All right, so on to the topic. First and foremost, I want to admit that I was recently involved in a cult, and I didn't know it. For about a year and a half, I was involved in a cult in South Korea, and I was going up there every once a month, and for 2 weeks, actually 2 weeks, 2 times out of the year. So I found out this January that they were a cult, and I was totally sucked in. And I used to be very judgmental and harsh for people who were in cults. And so this is like a very serious issue, because people can get sucked into this kind of thinking. And actually, there is a very good documentary called, it's about the People's Temple, which was Jim Jones, who was an atheist and a cult member. But one of the people in that group said that you don't join a cult, like you join an organization or a group or church or whatever, or an online forum, and you kind of just get sucked in and you just keep getting deeper and deeper. So I think that can be true even for Christians. What I grew up in, as far as the kind of Christianity I have, was very, very close to being a cult. And I also attended a Bible college where as a Church of Christ, and those guys were very, very, if not an absolute cult, on the edge. So anyway, I do want to start off by defining what I mean by cult. So that's important. So here's a description out of the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. I know you guys probably use the Oxford because you're got the Queen's English, but this is not my opinion here. So I'm just going to read. It says a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious, meaning that it's not what it's presented as. 2, a great devotion to an idea, an object, or movement. Or 3, a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. So I would like to dissect and discuss each of those. I'll start with number 2, which is devotion. Some films or books actually, like The Clockwork Orange, have a cult following. And so under this definition, some kind of excessive devotion to science as the end-all, be-all problem to solve everything in the universe can also be considered a cult. This is otherwise known as scientism. Next, we have unorthodox or spurious. And that is orthodox kind of has a or unorthodox, unorthodox has a kind of negative association, which is not exactly fair because it's not exactly negative, just like not traditional. So for example, when you're watching MMA or boxing, a fighter who fights orthodox has his left hand in front of him and his right arm back. Most boxers are right-handed. And so that position is called orthodox. So if someone fights, for example, in a southpaw position, they have their right hand in front. And so someone like Conor McGregor actually would be considered an unorthodox fighter, but that's obviously not saying that he is a bad fighter because he's a very good fighter. The next part is what I would call spurious, which means that this is where atheism actually fails the absolute hardest out of these descriptions, and that it purports itself to be an innocent lack of belief in a proposition. But that is really nonsensical to say that you simply lack a belief in something, because other things such as dogs or people in a coma, babies or clouds, they also lack a belief in God. So that's not really a morally consistent or honest argument to make. And under this definition, though, sorry. How am I doing on time, by the way? I don't have we don't have a time set up there.
He did put 2 minutes in the chat. I don't know when that was.
Okay,
though,
I can't even see.
I'm putting them in the private chat if that's.
Yeah, but I can't. Okay.
Okay, I'll pop them on DM on Twitter as well too.
I just cannot. Okay. Anyway, but by using these kind of same, this is to be the last line I'll say right here, and then I could discuss this later on. But by using the same kind of reasoning, you could say that books are vegetarians as they don't eat meat. Yet, you know what else doesn't eat meat? Sorry. You can say books don't eat meat, but books don't do what vegetarians do, which is also eating vegetables. And likewise, I got to say, it's absolutely impossible to reject a belief in God and not carry around a burden of the implications that it has, such as the inescapable conclusion that atheist mass killers or these current shooters that are happening in America, that they're going to face the same exact fate as the people that they're killing. So this leads me to the last point of atheism being strange and sinister. And I am running out of time here, so because I was planning on 10 minutes. So I'm going to have to leave the rest of this for the rest of the discussion.
Yep, that was pretty much on the timer from where I started it. So that's pretty good. Yeah, just an intro. And of course, I'm happy to I'm assuming, Jeff, you're happy if I field questions for later on too. I'll keep an eye on the chat.
Absolutely.
If there are. All right, so I'll do the same. Jeff, if you want to have 5 minutes. And by the way, Isaiah, I didn't start timing you until you actually started your argument, so I left that bit out at the beginning. So obviously, if Jeff, you have anything to say at the beginning before you get into it, I won't time that either. And yeah, I'm not super strict on the times for this. It's a fairly laid back thing. So yeah, whenever you're ready, Jeff.
Okay, well, I guess I'll start off as well for first of all saying thank you to Isaiah. And I'm glad that we've been been able to have this conversation because as people may have seen from the previous videos, a little over a week ago, we were not on the speaking basis at all, but a lot can change in a week. Definitely want to thank Matt for stepping in and agreeing to mod this as well. That being said, On the proposition, is atheism a cult in any way? I'm going to have to say no. But before we do that, I'm going to speak about there's going to be a couple of areas where Isaiah and I probably will find some level of agreement. Can atheists be guilty of groupthink? Absolutely. Can are there little groups and cliques within atheism that are cult-like? Absolutely. These are things these are sort of things I tend to call out an awful lot myself on my own channel. And the fact, this people don't sort of know, I've probably called out far more bad arguments from atheists than I have Christians. On the definitions thing, I don't particularly like the lacking of belief definition myself. Now, it's a definition I would have quite happily used a year or two ago, but it doesn't work for me anymore. And I would say that I hold a positive belief that there is no God. That's my own personal position. Now, I will say I think both definitions are valid. But yeah, I do see some similar issues with saying atheism is merely a psychological state of non-belief, because this is unfortunately is where we have the annual Rocks Are Atheist debacle that we seem to have every year in the community. And people, and I'm not even going to go over that, people know what I think of that argument. I think it's ridiculous. And, I think so. There's definitely going to be some areas where we are going to have some agreements on. But to say atheism is, as a whole, is a cult is just flawed. It is completely flawed because atheism deals with that one thing and that one thing only. It's a question on the existence of God, and other than that, that's really all it is. It's not really even a belief system as such. It only really deals with this. But now, can atheists be guilty of things like scientism, as Isaiah pointed out? Again, absolutely. But that's not a universal thing amongst all atheists at all. I mean, the fact that we ourselves can't even actually agree amongst ourselves on definitions should be a very good indicator that to say atheism is some kind of a cult is a very flawed just from the beginning. So I don't really have much more to say on this, so I'll yield the rest of the time back to Matt, to the moderator. So,
well, all right, I'm happy to take it from there. So from here, I think the two of you just want to have a nice, friendly discussion. So you can lead off on one of those topics, or I'm happy to lead you into any things that have come up. I will also just mention first for the chat, make sure that, yes, if you do have a question for later, just at me and I'll try and copy them over and keep a nice little record of them. And of course, if I miss any of them later, feel free to send them at me with a couple of angry little emojis too on them. So yeah, make sure you at me, or so make sure you at me. If not, I'm happy to leave this as an open discussion. So is there a particular topic, since Jeff just had his turn second, Isaiah, that you wanted to go off?
Well, first of all, I got to say, I really strongly appreciate you defining yourself in that level of atheism, under that definition, because I interviewed Canadian atheist, who I have to say is an absolute jewel among atheists. He is, like, in my opinion, the best atheist out there, because he's so kind, civil, charitable. But I interviewed him, and he gave a definition very similar to yours. And I say I have so much respect for that than to say you just simply lack a belief. So I do want to say that I think that is charitable to have that kind of, and that's fine. I do got to say this, Scummer, or. By the way, my name is Isaiah, not Isaiah. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry. Okay. I'll try and get that right.
Right. You're an Aussie. It's okay. I'm
actually a Brit.
Right. Okay. So, but if that were the case, and you just simply lacked a belief, or you don't believe in God, I have absolutely no issue with that. I don't. I would never call someone who just lacks a belief, like someone like Canadian atheist, I would never call someone like that a cultist. Like, if you don't believe, you don't believe. I mean, I don't believe in a lot of things. Would you call me like a cultist because I don't believe in leprechauns or tarot cards, you know? So that's not actually even the abusive cult-like element that this is a critique of. It is more what I call evangelical atheism, which seeks to spread atheism by a variety of different means. But one of those is by, and I think you mentioned this yourself earlier, is that using mental health as a way to attack and go after believers. And that's just really toxic, because there's lots of people out there who genuinely struggle with mental health, myself included, a lot worse in the past. But you know, that can be very dangerous and very toxic. So
I just say I totally agree with that, what you just said there. Again, something I've called out numerous times on this channel is any atheist saying that religion is a form of mental illness is, first of all, is that this is adding more unnecessary stigma around mental health issues. And then I also just think it's a very, very lazy way of actually engaging with, you know, religion as a topic. So I have issues with it, and you will find actually that there are a lot of atheists out there who have called that out. I know Shannon Hughes called that out. Bearded Heretic, even Matt Dillahunty has called that.
Mr. Bear.
Yeah, even he's called that out. That argument out. So that is definitely, I would say that is definitely not a position that is actually, that's a position where a certain sort of angry type of atheist will probably use. Okay, it is not something that is a majority position. I would say even in some of these very, very toxic sort of Facebook groups, people will be kicked for that right now. So,
well, I do want to say one thing is that in discussing, having some discussions with so many atheists that I've interviewed, one of the things that has came to my attention is that my sample size of atheists who I'm interviewing and talking with online, it's a very select minority, what you might call like a vocal minority, they're the most outspoken and they're the most abusive. But your average just atheist who just doesn't believe is just like, they actually don't even want to put it out there because they have some kind of fear that they might be, you know, doxxed or abused, or their family might find out. I mean, I was an atheist myself for about 10 years, and I literally would go up and preach at my father's church because I didn't want them to find out about my atheism. So I can understand that, you know, like, I think that's, I think they made a very valid point.
I think that's an interesting point you've just raised there, because I want to bring this up because I know we're going to bring this up at some point. You admitted yourself when you had this conversation with Jay that a lot of your thinking on this came from a short pamphlet written by what's the name of the guy? Justin R. Joseph. Yeah.
I'm making that available in the chat, by the way, for free.
Yeah, I did. Now I did read that. I mean, I will say calling it a book is a bit of a stretch. It's more, it's a small, very small pamphlet, and you know, now, because he does talk an awful lot about the fact that we have these atheist organizations in this, and which seems to be a lot of his thinking is around, and we have groups and communities that come together. Now, I think you touched on the reason that there's a reason that exists, and that is that in certain places or around the world, it can be pretty difficult for atheists to actually come out to family and friends. You know, it's you know, so it support networks and so on can be, you know, could go. So a lot of the time, a lot of the reason these communities exist is you know, giving essentially a safe space for people who've come out of religion and a new community. That's kind of the purpose. Now you've got the other side of that are more the lobbyist side, guys like American Atheist Freedom from Religion and so on. And then I think we've got the National Secular Society in the UK, who aren't strictly speaking even really an atheist organisation. They just argue for for secularity, like separation of church and state, which we don't actually have in Britain. But they exist. They do exist because you would agree that there are definitely religious elements that lobby for politics. Certainly, lobby politically. Certainly in America, you would agree with that.
Yeah, and I would say just on this, you and I are going to have to find some agreement, because as far as the government goes, I'm a complete secular humanist. I don't believe in involving my personal religious beliefs into the government. So I'm very much against. I'm not an evangelical. I'm not a Republican. I'm not for people projecting, like with this abortion issue that just came out. I'm not. I mean, I personally am totally against abortion, and I'm totally against things like gay marriage. But I do believe that people should have those rights. Like they shouldn't have to follow my description of a marriage. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, at the end of the day, nobody's forcing you to get married to a gay guy, are they? So it shouldn't really affect you. So, you know.
Yeah. So I think we just have to find common ground there. You know.
Exactly. We should do, but this is where I have some issues with this guy, though, because he's trying, and I know he shared an article from Penn University on this, and essentially he's trying to go back to an older meaning of the word cult, which describes more of a social movement rather than like any kind of religious movement, and but the problem is, so he's wanting to go back to an older definition. But he also seems to want to classify atheists in the same way that we would think of cults today. So I feel like this guy is trying to have this. And I know this is what this guy is saying. It's not necessarily what you're saying, but I know that you've based a lot of your thinking upon this. He does seem to be wanting his cake and to eat it as well on this issue. And it does. And the whole, and so that's just one element. But I'll let you come back on that if you'd like.
So I didn't get to mention this in the talk because I asked Matt for 10 minutes, but he only gave me 5. So I did cover this, but when I say a cult, I'm not saying like I believe you guys are out drinking blood or sacrificing people or things like that, or like you're following one person, because there are cults.
Some of us are.
Well, and then you have the Satanists who are atheists as well. So I definitely recognize that there are some people who are like that, but the reality is that what he defines as a cult is people who are having what society would deem as a bizarre or unorthodox view. Okay, that doesn't mean that you're bad. As I pointed out, unorthodox just means it is apart from the mainstream. Okay, so now if I was in the 2nd or the 1st century and I was a Christian, by definition, I would be in a cult. And I know Chris touched on this. You wanted to get really pedantic about this, but yes, I would definitely say that Christianity for a time was a cult, one, and there are definitely elements inside of Christianity, such as some of the really extremist evangelicals who I would positively and unequivocally call a cult, because they have views that are so outside of the mainstream, and they're flat. Like for example, hold on, just for example, to say that the Earth is 6,000 years old, that to me is so bizarre, it is so unorthodox. If you're gonna put yourself in that kind of bubble and shut off the rest of the world, I would definitely say that's a cult. Okay.
Yeah. But I would hardly call atheism a very fringe or unusual or unorthodox position to be taking. Really, just taking the position that there's no God. Now, it may be a minority position in certain, and globally speaking, it probably is a minority position. But it's hardly what you call, it's hardly fringe, and it's hardly unorthodox. It's a minority position. But I think, it's hard. It really fails. It really fails on that level to say that it is just to just say it's an unorthodox position. That therefore it's a cult. That makes zero sense.
Okay, so So Scummer, that's a weird name to be calling someone, but
I told you the meaning behind that.
GS, I'll call you G. How about G?
Yeah, Jeff's fine.
That's
fine.
Okay,
yeah.
Jeff. So you do understand that every culture, every society who has ever existed, and I touched on this in my opening, but I didn't get it. I was supposed to. I wrote about it, but every society has culture, has looked up to the stars, looked to the things around us, and said, clearly something is out there. All right. And societies, people, everybody has said that there's been some kind of interaction that we've had. So to say that it's not bizarre or unorthodox, I would say everybody up to now, with a very small minority, would disagree with that. Okay, that doesn't mean you're wrong. It doesn't mean that you're not right. But if you take this into consideration as well, that 70% of the atheists exist in Asia alone. And the vast majority of those are in China, where atheism was forced at the end of a gun. So these aren't, what I'm trying to say in that is that these aren't conclusions that your average person would come to, that there is no God. Because
I mean, I'll just caution you right now of trying to go down the equating atheism with anything like Maoism, Stalinism, or and I know, or North Korea, for example, because I know that's quite close to your heart. And
right.
It's right on your doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
I'd caution you about
it.
There. Now, I would say some of those political. It says a lot more about those particular political ideologies and the people implementing them. I mean, yes, Mao, for example, was he did view religion as quite a poisonous thing, but it's unfortunately it's a really bad thing that I think that to start getting into, because eventually what we end up doing is going to things like Godwin's law, it's which is something that really bothers me, because they say every side seems to want to pass them in Adolf Hitler around like a ping pong.
Right.
And it's not helpful, because there's a lot of sort of discussion around his own religious ideas and so on. I mean, because he said something in Mein Kampf about being Christian or whatever, but he clearly wasn't a Christian. He may have been into some sort of Volkish pagan stuff, whatever.
Yeah,
but
he was
But the point being, and Graham Oppy makes quite a good little point in this book. Actually, I've actually got it marked about this, because it gets into this idea, because a common criticism is that atheism are all sort of political ideologues or ideologies like that, and it's just certainly not true at all. And so I'd be careful about going down those lines, because at the same time, we also have countries where forms of religion are forced upon people.
Yeah, and that's wrong. That's wrong. That doesn't make what atheists do right, though.
No, well,
it's like, this is whataboutism, though. It's like, okay, if Christians have done that in the past.
No, it's not. It's cautioning you against going down a fallacious line of reasoning, and that's what I feel I was doing.
No, but okay. Yes, well, it's saying, well, Christians have done this too. Okay, well, if that's the case, Christians need to be called out on this as well. The Republicans need to be called out on this as well. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a right-winger. I'm not a Trumpster. I'm not a QAnoner. So I actively call out people like that. If Darth Dawkins is listening, Mr. Gary Milne.
You didn't just Isaiah. You didn't just dox him, did you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do that.
I do apologize.
Sorry,
I hate using that name. Okay, Darth. I'll just call him Darth.
Right. I know you actually no. I won't say what we call him, because I'll just hear your daughter's in earshot, so I won't.
Well, she can't hear, but it's probably best not to use. The point is,
I know you don't like profanity. We tend to refer to him as asshole 104. Okay. So.
Well, it's just not right. Whoever that person, whatever you want to call him, it's not right to be abusing people and using profanity and cussing them out. And I've called him out multiple times, which is totally can be found on Tom Rabbit's channel.
Yeah, and I applaud you for calling him out, because I think he's a vile human being.
Transphobic. I've called him out on the transphobic, abusing Arden of Eden and other atheists. That's just not right. So I I'm going to have to post my opening statement. I listed the links to. I do apologize, Darth. That was sorry. I'm sorry about that. I just hate using that name because it gives him some kind of like he's some superhero and he's just an ordinary guy who's very hurtful to people. That's all I got to say about that. But anyway, the point being is that both sides, we got to be willing to, I will say this, both sides, we got to be willing to call it out whenever it occurs. Now, you've seen my daughter here multiple times. In atheist groups, people have gone after her, saying she's not my child. They've gone after my lip because I have a deformity in my lip. They said my daughter is going to grow up to be a prostitute and all kinds of horrible stuff. And other atheists have sat by while this is going on in these groups and not said anything. So we just really need to call out this abusive.
I would agree if stuff like that has been said about your daughter. I would totally agree. Those people need to be called out because that's just wrong. That's just wrong. And even look, even when you and I weren't getting along a couple of weeks ago, I certainly wouldn't bring family into the equation.
Sure.
But it's but again, are there this goes to the thing. Are there atheists that are guilty of like some pretty bad behaviour? Are you comfortable with your daughter being on screen?
She can't hear. She can't hear anything. She's
but I don't know because
Okay, let me put her off screen. Let me close it. She loves photobombing.
It's probably YouTube can get a bit funny about it as well because my content is marked not safe for kids.
Apologies.
Okay, so what I was saying is, yes, that kind of behaviour is not acceptable, and I would like to say I think any atheist I know would call these people out, especially if they're an actual atheist group doing this. They need to be called out, and and people need to be warned off of getting involved with them. But all of that saying is are there atheists who are capable of acting like just being nasty people? Of course there are. However, again, we say that about we can say that about people of any religion or whatever. It's not really supporting the idea that atheism is some kind of a cult.
Well, under the definitions that I've listed, atheism literally falls under every last one of those categories. So I rattled out 3 definitions. I would say now, obviously, there is far more extremes. Like you would never in a million years, I would never in a million years compare atheists to like the Ragnishis, okay? That it would be a totally unfair comparison. And I would never do that. My particular beef with one is more what I would call evangelical atheism, one. And literally, I mean, I'm just gonna have to post my my opening statement because I really went down and addressed all of this. So actually, I do want to say this. I did list all the references to showing atheist negative influence on people, such as higher rates of suicide, depression, anxiety, and mental health. And so I've put that all available as well as Justin's book.
I would be interested to read that, especially if there's any kind of peer-reviewed study on that. I would definitely be interested in reading that.
It's from the Mayo Clinic, American Psychological. Let me pull it up here. I'm sorry, keep going.
Yeah, I mean,
American Journal of Psychiatry, Mayo Clinic, and National Alliance on Mental Health. So it's all available in the description.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think now. Was this listed as? I think this may have been listed as a source in this guy's.
Yeah,
book,
it is. It is. It is.
I think I may have read this actually, but I mean, obviously, we haven't got time whilst we're on air to read through that. But I think I mean, again, no, it's you're saying this is an effect atheism is having on society or whatever. I mean, there is an issue there. There may be a correlation. That doesn't necessarily mean there's a causation there.
Right. I'll grant that.
That's so you got to that's which you'd say is a fair statement. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, and see, because this is one of the problems I want to say that I want to bring up, because, and again, this is something that I feel this guy is really that this guy who wrote this book, who I know, like you said, I know you've based a lot of your thinking on this, has built a complete straw man of atheism, because it is essentially equated atheism with nihilism, because it's saying we don't believe in a god, therefore it's this big chain of thinking. We don't believe in anything, therefore we feel like everything is meaningless. That's not true. That is absolute straw man of atheism. We anything, especially when it comes to, when I hear statements like what she's put in this book, that atheists do not value human life, I actually find that quite offensive. Because I believe we are here one time only.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, to me, that makes human life even more precious to me, because if I'm believing that if I take someone's life, I am wiping that person's existence out forever. It makes it even worse for somebody like me. Do you understand where I'm coming from on this?
Well, I got to say, this is where I would say I have been personally disabused by having atheists as co-hosts, which I positively do have atheists as co-hosts. One of them from the UK, by the way. And I will say this, as someone mentioned doxing. What I do with my channel is I treat people with kindness and care. And so far, 8-9 atheists have trusted me with their addresses to send them out gifts.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to do. I try to open up friendly, reasonable, respect.
To be fair, I think a lot of people probably do know Darth's name already, but I don't want him this and using this as some sort of excuse.
I literally just hate the idea of referring to him by that name. Just call him DD or whatever. That just it's really offensive that people use like a superhero. He's like some kind of superhero or whatever. That's really is my issue. I don't want to entertain that. But okay, I do apologize to him and you and this channel and everyone else, because I actually got doxxed recently by Oz from the Tang, and I was not a fan of that. So yeah, this is definitely not appropriate. But so by having the conversations with one of my co-hosts, whose name is Darrington, he definitely did help me to see what you just said right now. And I would say, from having conversations with a lot of atheists, I've definitely have come to see that Christians have painted a straw man picture of them, because some of it is just from what we're socialized with, growing up hearing stories or jokes. Atheists actually had the brunt of a lot of jokes. So I do got to say that I have learned from them, listening to them open and honestly, that maybe they do have well, first of all, I would say that from my interaction with them, that they have sometimes live out the gospel better than Christians. Just hate to say it, but
I won't put myself in that category.
But I don't believe that atheists are just out killing people or just being bad people. You know what I mean? That's not my argument. That's definitely not my argument, because I don't believe that. I positively don't believe that. Or that Christians are out doing good things. There's a lot of Christians out there who genuinely want to hurt and abuse people, such as people from the trans community. That's not okay. We got to understand, speaking about mental health and people's personal well-being, that we got to be careful how we're talking to people, no matter where they are. So I call it out where it is. I definitely would like to see more of that from the atheist side. I'll give you credit to say if you've done that, but I haven't seen much of it from my own end. So
okay, yeah, but I mean, obviously, because I feel like we're going off on a little bit of a tangent there, I suppose. Okay. But I felt it was I thought it was relevant to sort of bring that particular thing up, because that straw man is what is put in this thing, the Curious Cult of Atheism. That is the picture that it's and and the whole thing is this is supposed to be somehow building a case that atheism is some sort of a cult. And I mean, to be honest, if you're going to construct straw man arguments, if you have to construct straw man arguments to try and make this point, then you think, this whole thing is on very, very shaky ground.
Well, I just will have to say that I use the word when I looked up. Spurious means that you're representing something that's not actually the case. So if you say that denying that there's a God is the only thing that we're saying, I would have to say that's not honest, because you have to say, as you just said that we only have this one life. So if that's the case, then the killer of this Uvalde who went in there and shot all those people, this guy's had the same exact fate as those children that he's killed. That is a dangerous thing to be telling people, you know. So maybe it might be true. It might be true, but it's a dangerous thing to openly promote. Like if I were like this, if I was an atheist and that's what I actually believed, I would definitely not be promoting that and trying to strip away people's religion, like myself, who's actually really helped me to reunite with my wife. He's really helped me to overcome my depression, alcoholism, and suicidal tendencies. I don't understand why what I call the evangelical side of atheists is so eager to spread this, because I definitely think that it has some implications that are not good for humanity.
Well, look, I don't actually see. I really don't see the harm in positing the idea that there is no God. Now, when you talk about evangel, I mean, I don't fall into the camp of anti-theists.
Okay.
I'm not somebody that thinks, all religion is inherently harmful. I do see harm being done. I do see some harm coming from religious doctrines.
I agree.
Of course, but I don't necessarily. I wouldn't go as far as to say, having a religious, having a religious belief does not make someone a bad person. It does, and religion on itself, it can be a very positive. It can be a very, very positive thing in a lot of respects. I do not really see how it's actually just harmful just to posit the idea that there may not be a God. There is no harm in it.
So you're talking more about in lines of agnosticism or soft atheism. I mean, soft atheism, agnosticism. I don't have an issue with that. I really don't have an issue with that.
I'm not talking about agnosticism. I'm talking about atheism. Actually saying, putting the actual epistemic thing up there, and we saying, I believe there is no God. There is really no harm in that.
Well, we're probably gonna have to agree to disagree on that, because I definitely do. I do.
Well, I'd agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong, wouldn't we?
That's a good line. Yeah, I mean, well, I think put it like this. I think there's going to be a gulf that's naturally going to exist between me and you, and I think, look, maybe if we can't find areas to disagree and to agree everywhere, we're just gonna have to find areas to agree on. My co-host from the UK, we have talks. We sometimes watch movies or something together online, and we don't always bring up that issues. It comes up a lot. I mean, I'm not going to lie, it does come up. We do discuss it, but there's other things that we can try to appreciate and about other people's interest and try to learn from that. So, because I mean, if you genuinely think that just saying that there's not a God doesn't have any other implications, I would just have to point you over to North Korea, where I got this tattooed on me, which is a North Korean atheistic philosophy. When I was an atheist,
we went. But I'm not sure. We went through it. We went through this earlier, though. North Korea. That doesn't say anything about atheism. That's really not saying anything about atheism. Now we can say that says a lot about what's it they call it? Kim Il Sung thought, or whatever they call it, or Juche, their national ideology.
Mm-hmm.
But that does not really say a lot about atheism. That says a lot more about that particular. I mean, that particular form of communism. Even most communists that I know think is completely warped.
Yeah. So yeah, I would agree with you. That's definitely not communism. I mean, I've been there on several occasions as an atheist, which really put a crack in the ceiling of my atheism. But here it is. I'll just present this to you. This might fly over, and just you might not accept it, but I will say this: if you tell people that there's not a God, you can put it into people's minds. Atheists like Jim Jones or Kim Il Sung, they might say, I can create myself into being a god, and there's no one else to keep me accountable for that. And if I can enslave an entire country to make me believe that I'm a god, then oh well, like I'm just I'm just making myself into God. So
there's actually there's not, even if you look, that's, even if you posit the idea of a, that there is a God, people are still capable of becoming demagogues.
Okay, I agree.
You'd agree. I mean, look, there's been, we've had centuries of like religious demagogues as well. It's just, to me, it's just completely the question of the existence of God is abstract in this. It is abstract. Now, do I think there's definite factors at work for these why these cults of personality were absolutely built by certain leaders. And I mean, really, it seemed, especially on the communist side, it really started with Stalin. Which is where it really, and Stalinism really became the blueprint really for all the other sort of communist nations. They all kind of followed suit, because that was the model. But I mean, that's a whole nother topic within it. That's a whole nother debate, really. That, or a whole nother stream. But it's just, again, the question of the existence or non-existence of God is completely abstract to that point.
Yeah, and all I have to say is that if sorry, I'm just seeing what Radicals wrote. Stalin trained in a seminary. Oh well, I was trained in a seminary and I became an atheist afterwards. So that doesn't really mean anything. By that definition, then Radicals, you're still an atheist yourself, because you studied the Bible. So that's not really, that doesn't really make any sense. But I mean, I'll just got to say, if you don't have a belief, and even if you want to argue the position and maybe even call out for atheism for Christianity or theism for the abusive sides or the irrational sides, like, I don't have an issue with that. I genuinely don't. So if that's the extent of it, and you're keeping us honest, which you should be, and you're calling out the abusive sides, then I think, actually, I do believe that atheism can serve a very positive role in helping keep things in line and in check. I consider myself a secular humanist, honestly, politically. So I do believe there's a role for it. My major issue is with the evangelical side of it, that seeks to abuse us believers. And I think it's very dangerous. And that is definitely what I would, that's what I would qualify as being the most cultish side of of atheism, as it is.
But I think by what you're saying, you talk about people who were very, very hardcore with their atheism, all right, or whatever. You're recognizing that this isn't atheists or really atheism as a whole. You're recognizing this.
Sure.
So really, by implication, there, your whole premise for atheism is a cult falls. When you recognize, I mean, you effectively recognize that the whole premise is completely false. Because we've said right from the beginning, haven't we, that there are cult-like groups within atheism. We've both agreed on that from the beginning.
I mean, I will say this, that there's obviously more abusive, and the evangelical side is the more abusive side that I would call a more, because obviously you could rank cults. I mean, I have Mormons who come over here on a weekly basis to my house, and I've interviewed 4 of them on this channel. Okay. And I make them food every week and we have conversations. Now, you may qualify Mormonism as a cult, but if you do, I would qualify like them, the Moonies and the Jehovah's Witnesses. If you do qualify them as a cult, I would say they would be a very low tier cult. One, and there's another word that has been used to describe like the Moonies, where they're not actually like a cult, they're like a high demand or high commitment religion. So I will say that there are varying degrees of this, but by the definitions that I use and I laid out, you're going to have to read all of my opening statement. Then the fact that you have views that most of society, most of the world, most of history would describe as unorthodox, and sinister, and doesn't mean that actually doesn't even mean that it's necessarily a bad thing. Like some groups like the Black Lives Matter, they actually have some really good beliefs. Some of them, and then they have some that are really off base. And so I would qualify them as cult, but they would be like a very, very low tier. They're not worshiping someone. They're not even maybe even necessarily meeting in groups. They might just be completely online. But it doesn't mean, like, I'm not saying you guys are out with a cloak and dagger everywhere. That's not my argument in saying why atheism is a cult.
Yeah, I really feel that the entire, I mean, I do feel like the definition now is flawed. Now, I know what this guy was doing, certainly within the book or whatever. He was trying to go back to like an older definition, but he's also trying to apply this to a sort of modern understanding of how a cult is defined. So, and as I said earlier, you can't have your cake and eat it on this one, I'm afraid. Now, words do change meaning over time. Now, I wouldn't even necessarily call atheism a social movement. Now, new atheism, there might be some merit to that.
Touche.
There might be some merit to that. Since because there is a little bit of that I would say is a movement. I still think it's a real it's a real stretch to sort of call it a cult. But I think we're I mean. I just think that the whole premise is flawed because of the way it looks of it. And I know Robert X, I know you brought up in the chat, and I know, look, we haven't even had time to go in that, but I mean, I know, Isaiah is familiar with the bike model. I know that. Isaiah, sorry, I'm considering your name, but I know you're familiar with the, yeah.
Well, yeah, and if I were to apply that model to atheism, and I addressed this in the written opening, but that you definitely have elements of emotional control. I mean, I've been, by this community, specifically the hereticals community, I have been gaslit a lot. And so by using some kind of emotional control over people, I think that again, this may just speak to certain individual atheists or groups, but I see it as a not accepting of like dissent. And I give an example of, hold on, let me finish.
Yeah.
Khalil Allah was an atheist apologist, and he converted to Islam. And he told me this personally, what he's received is death threats. He's received doxing. He's also received people continually dead name him, even though they're so insistent that Christians, which I'm totally fine to use the preferred pronouns or preferred new names, no problem at all for that. But then the atheists will turn around and dead name that guy. So it's like, it's very hypocritical. It's not right.
Right. I mean, I don't really want to get too much into what's happened with Khalil, because we know that there's some things that have kind of come out there, and it's probably best not to postulate on that, because there's been some things that have come out and so on. Now, yeah, did some people turn on him? Yeah, absolutely.
Death threats.
Now I'm unaware of. If he is, that shouldn't have happened.
Sure.
But
thank you for calling out.
Look, but I'm going to defend hereticals, the hereticals community a bit here, because you're talking about what happened to Khalil. Hereticals are one of the people who called that out.
Okay, well, okay, right. That's great.
Chris in particular, I know, called that out.
That's great.
They're just turning on someone because they no longer hold a atheist position. He said that just to turn on them for that is completely out of line. So I'm going to defend hereticals a bit on that one. So
I think we have some questions.
I was going to ask, actually, I don't know if Matt, do you want to come in at this point and maybe do we want to take some questions from the chat? I don't know, because we're up to like.
Yes, I've got a few questions. I think I've possibly missed one or two if they were not if there wasn't an at to me. So if I miss anyone's, please do that. But I do have a few. Though I do want to say first, is that you guys are making my job really, really easy. I'm sitting here going, come on, get into an argument, stop fighting with each other. I need something to break up.
To be honest, I thought this would be far more of a dumpster fire than it's actually been. So
I said the fact that it's not a dumpster fire is making my life too easy. I need something to do almost. So I have a few questions. If, as I said, if I miss any, please pop them, just at me in the YouTube chat, and hopefully we can get to them. But yes, I think a few little mini tangents, but they were all useful there. So okay, I got them up. So the first one is STST asks, why did God create atheism? So I'm guessing that one is to Isaiah.
No idea.
Well,
fair point.
Yeah, that's I mean, as I don't think there is a God, then by definition, God couldn't have created atheism.
Touche.
All right, let me. Next one is actually from Hereticals.
Oh God!
How can atheism be a cult when atheists can't even agree on what the definition of atheist is?
Should we talk about this earlier? Actually,
it might have covered this a bit.
We might have touched on this, but
well, I mean, I guess just the end of the day, I'm going to say it's just some element of atheism is a cult. Probably, I would assume what he's talking about. Maybe you could describe this many ways, with a capital A, or a hard atheist, or an anti-theist. I would assume that those people would be the people who I would qualify as more cult-like behavior. I have no issue whatsoever with people who do not believe. I have no issue. I've had plenty of atheists who don't believe, and we get along just fine. We get along perfectly fine. So, yeah, I'm not saying they're all equal. Just like not all Christians are equal, they're not equal in their behavior.
So I think most of them are for.
Probably most of them are going to be.
So you have any questions for Jeff? Please go for it.
Darth, ask him a question, Darth.
See if he comes back, or whether we've scared him off for now.
I really apologize for that. That was a slip up.
No.
The next question was from Critical Cupcake that I've got down here. And I think this is probably towards your earlier point, Isaiah, when you mentioned that you acknowledged that there are Christians who are doing a lot of bad things. So I think that was that section. I think you mentioned like the young earth creationists and what's going on in the States. Was how have you dissociated that with treatment by Christians in a Christian society? So that's what I think the context is for. So
I generally don't even understand that.
Yeah, we might need a bit of a clarification.
I've had a few of these ciders, so yeah, I don't know.
No, I think it's because it's a bit out of context that's going to make it a bit harder. So, Critical, if you're there, and then we have one just come in from everyone's favorite Double D. Then. Okay, then what evidence does Godless have for his false atheist God?
Darth. Yeah, false atheist God. I do like that. Well, he exists, and he hosts a show every week called The Atheist Experience. You can watch it on. And no, that's all right. I'm not. That's a joke. I don't think Dylan Hunt. He's a god. Believe me.
Oh God.
I do have another one for Jeff, but I think I'll ask another one first. So this one is also from Critical Cupcake, and I think this one actually goes back to your the earlier part of the conversation when Jeff was mentioning that most atheists will acknowledge that, as far as we can tell, this is most likely the only life that we get, and so we must make the best go of it possible. And that was does it not bother you that you're wasting your one life? And I think the context there is if you're wrong.
Yeah.
So it's kind of turning, I think, one of your points a little bit back.
That's kind of Pascal's wager in reverse, isn't it?
Well, one of my atheist co-hosts, we took turns still manning the other people's position and the things that we found to be best about their position. And I will say this, that was one of the things I pointed to. Like, I do think atheists have a competitive advantage in the sense because of their carpe diem mentality. If you believe that this is your only life, yeah, you're going to have to get at it more every day. You're going to have to say the things that you want to say every single day and spend the time that, you should be spending with your child. I think of that all the time. Like, if I truly live like an atheist maybe should be, like, how would I be treating my daughter? You know what I mean? My daughter's tried to make her way into this podcast several times. And it really does make me think, like, would I spend my time debating this topic, or would I just turn off the computer and go spend some time with her? So I will say that that has definitely made me reconsider things. I one other thing too. I did have a conversation with Kenneth Leonard, and he was talking about how, I think he said his father died, and he was saying as an atheist, he was able to just let that chapter go. And as a Christian, we have to sit around wrestling with whether or not that person's in heaven or if they knew Jesus. And I just would say in the short term, I could understand that it's probably more helpful just to believe that this was your only life. The things that I should have said to my father, I'll never have that opportunity to, and move on with your life. I think it had a lot of benefits, honestly.
Yeah, it's quite a big question or at least can of worms that question opens up. It's not an easy solution either way. But sorry, and again, I apologize if I've missed anyone's questions. Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to add to that one?
Or... No, not really. No.
All right.
I will answer one. My favourites I saw in the chat. My favourite beer is Guinness, but I'm not drinking it at the moment. I'm on Stella Artois at the moment.
Cheers. Hey, cheers.
Cheers.
I'll say cheers with my empty mug for the tea that I had.
We've turned this into 6-pack.
We don't. We don't.
Well, I'm not drinking, so it's not quite 6-pack yet.
I think that's.
I should have got a zero alcohol.
I think that would be cultural appropriation, I'm afraid.
I do want to say, just we're probably going to be wrapping up here pretty soon, but I do want to say I love your hair, Jeff. Just throw that out there. It's very nice, very lovely.
Yes.
All right. Well, there was I do have a question now for Jeff, a little of a lighthearted one. Let me just find it. If your favorite team wins, what dance will you do, and why isn't it flossing?
If Southampton win, I'm going to twerk.
Oh God!
Part of me wants to ask to make sure that there is video evidence of that, and another part of me is not sure whether we're all ready for that.
Thankfully, if Southampton never win, you don't have to worry about it.
Well, when I upload this to my channel, I'm editing that part out. I do not want that image in my head.
Yeah. No worries, mate.
Okay. It's just derailed me from where I was. Let's.
I think
what was the next question?
That's a note to end this on, isn't it? Let's take a couple more.
Okay. So I think this is again to Isaiah. There's. Does he think Islam is a cult?
One of my best friends is a Muslim here, and just today I sent his daughter $50, and he's helped me out whenever I was in a very bad situation. I've had the chance to go into Palestine and spend a week amongst Muslims, and they, for the most part, have been a better representation of Christ than the Christians who I've encountered. So I am not someone who's going to want to go and attack Muslims. I love Muslims. One of my friends actually lives in Bangladesh, and I'm not just trying to brag on myself here. I'm just genuinely telling you that when these people are in need and need help, I help them out. So I might disagree on some stuff religiously, but they're not people I want to attack. I don't even want to attack atheists, honestly. If atheists were to cut the abusive talk, you would never hear anything about about what I have to say about their behavior. But it's just the fact that I said they've gone after my facial hair, they've gone after my deformed lip, stuff that has nothing to do with any of these talks. So I'll admit something, that this is a little bit of a troll on my part, but it is specifically to call out this kind of abusive behavior that is just as toxic, and it's just as intolerant as the religious stuff that atheists are against. So, yeah.
Jeff, you want to add anything while I go to the next question?
Not really on that. Look, yeah, we should call out abusive behaviour from in our. We definitely need sometimes. We do need to keep our own house in order a bit. I'll agree with that.
All right. So does Isaiah agree that some atheists can be cult-like, but atheism as a whole is not?
No, because by the definition, I've already said, by the definitions I've explained why atheism is a cult. So there's more abusive elements inside of that umbrella. I will say that. Okay, there's definitely worse elements, but that doesn't really matter, because just by definition, it is a cult. So, yeah.
But would you say that whole umbrella, that just stating that you don't believe, whether that's a strong or a weak belief, but just the whole umbrella, are you saying that itself has got abusive elements to it? Does that entail them? Or
okay, so let's just say you took the Dawkins model, from 1 to 7, right? Now, is every atheist a 7 as far as being a cult? No, I wouldn't say that. There's probably most people are on the 1s or 2s. So I will say that as an overall definition, that is the case. But it is a case that the entirety of it is a cult just by definition. But when you start looking at people individually, there's people who are far more cult-like than just your average person who genuinely doesn't believe. And I said, I have no issue with people who don't believe.
I think my obvious comeback on that is I don't, and I think we've pointed this out a few times. I think the definition you're using is completely flawed anyway. And because I know, like I said, I certainly know how it's being used from the book which you based a lot of this on. And I mean, to me, it's just trying to define atheism into being a cult. So, and that's the problem with this. It doesn't hold up, I'm afraid, in my opinion. It just does not hold up.
well, I have, unless there's any questions you have for each other, though, I'm guessing we're nearly done.
I'm cool. We probably need to stop in a minute.
Okay, then I have one last question for you from Hawk Skull. Given that God is infinite and the universe is also infinite, would anyone like some toast?
Only if you've got Marmite or Vegemite, so that's.
Well,
I'm in the right part of the world to supply one of those.
I have Vegemite. Believe it or not,
Vegemite.
I get Vegemite. I get Vegemite. You Aussies are rubbing off on me.
Yes, also keeps the drop bears away.
It's a form of drop bear repellent.
Yeah, no, seriously, you put it around the windowsills at night and it keeps them away. They won't come dropping on top of you while you sleep. On which note? Sorry, Jeff.
I was going to say this will start a debate. You know, that you want to have a real dumpster fire, Marmite versus Vegemite. That'd be
that's not a dumpster fire. That's someone has used C4 in the dumpster and then thrown it off a cliff and waited for it to impact a ship below carrying a shipload of explosives.
If you guys don't mind, use English because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, I think we're from the wrong end of the world, aren't we?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Two countries separated by a common language. In this case, 3, but that was the quote. Anyway, I think then if there aren't any more questions, which it doesn't look like they, at least for you two, then I think we might wrap that up. In which case, again, thank both of you for making my job here so easy. This was, I was sitting here going, I'm not even sure what I'm here for part of it. It was very, very civil. It was very controlled. And although you disagreed on a few things, it was very respectful. So I'm glad it went that way, because we've all seen how easy these discussions can go. The other, definitely burning in a large bin, to avoid using the same phrase we just did, can go. So yeah, thanks to both of you again.
Yep.
And thanks to everyone else who showed up. And I'm sure you all got something out of it, or even if it was just a bit of enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, just one last thing. I definitely do want to thank Scummer, because he definitely didn't have to reach out after like this. I don't know why he even reviewed that talk, because that was like 6 months ago, but he did review that, and you could have kept it as trying to demonize or gaslight me, but you genuinely reached out, and I think that is worth a lot of credit where it's due. So you reached across the aisle, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'll thank you for actually coming on and engaging honestly. And I did say this: I'm a man of my words.
You're already forgiven.
Yeah, well, and I'm a man of my word. I apologise for having called you a disingenuous prick. I'm a man of my word. I said if you came on here and you had this conversation honestly, I would apologise to you on air. I'm a man of my word. So I do feel
you are very much.
We definitely don't agree on this, but I can't.
Sure.
But there's definitely. It was definitely. I feel it was honest. So.
Well, I got to say that by having this conversation with me was more than enough of an apology. Words are cheap, but actually be willing to sit down and try to understand where people are coming from and try to humanize them. That is worth 100 times more than 100 apologies. So I really thank you for that. And thank you again, Mr. Matt.
Yeah. Okay.